Hello, welcome to KBC's Daily Bible Study, looking at characters in the Bible. And today we're looking at Job, found in the book of Job. That's right, just before the Psalms. So we don't know who wrote it or when, but scholars do tell us that they think it's a very old book, a very ancient book. The book begins with an almost fairy tale start, introducing the character of Job from the mysterious land of Uz. That was Uz, not Oz. That's where the wizard lives. So somewhere in the Middle East, probably, we're not sure. But one thing we do know is that he is not an Israelite, which is interesting. He is described, however, as a good man, God-fearing and blameless. Blameless. So he's very wealthy, has lots of land, lots of livestock, a huge family. So that's the introduction to Job. Scene 2, the courts of heaven. Who knew there was a court in heaven where Satan comes before God and challenges him? And he says this, Job's loyalty to God is only skin deep. Take away what he has and he will curse God. God disagrees, but allows that to be tested. So cut a long story short, Satan removes Job's wealth, his family, and even his health. And what we have in the rest of the book is Job's reaction to that, along with his friends, and so on. So Job's reaction, understandably at first, he's distraught. First we read his heartfelt, despairing cries of anguish, cursing the day that he was born, but crucially, not cursing God, or indeed blaming God. He says things like, I came into the world with nothing, I will leave in the same way. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. But he's allowed to be upset. He's lost everything. But he remains reverent before God. And by the way, his wife very unhelpfully says advice such as, curse God and die. Yep, cheers for that. Anyway, chapter 4 onwards, the bulk of the book then is taken up with the dialogue between Job and his 3 friends. Quite unhelpful friends who come to offer advice and reasons for his suffering. So the dialogue can be summarized in this very short way. His friends say, all suffering is caused by sin. You are suffering, therefore you have sinned. Repent and maybe God will make you better. Job replies, actually, not sinned. So therefore suffering cannot be, or all suffering cannot be the result of sin. And I won't repent of what I haven't done. And by the way, you're not very helpful. And he also perhaps throws in, by the way, what is going on, God? But that 30 or so chapters that I just summarized very unpoetically in the original is, well, it contains some of the most impressive poetry in the Bible. And although Job argues his innocence, some may say rightly, of course rightly, he has a proper rant at his friends and a bit of a rant at God. But he does come back to this sentiment. He says remarkable things. In chapter 19, 23 to 27, he says, I know my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I myself will see him with my own eyes, I and not another. How my heart yearns within me. And in chapter 32, we find another friend turn up. This chap is called Elihu. Not anyhow, but Elihu. Elihu. And suggests that perhaps all of this is not actually as a result of sin, but a warning not to sin, a kind of wake-up call, if you like. In truth, all his friends are just trying to make sense of it, aren't they? And suggest reasons as to why all this has happened, which we know is a futile exercise, don't we? Then in chapter 38, God himself turns up and speaks. What does God say? Surely he's going to answer all their questions, settle all the arguments. Well, this is what God says. Why do you talk so much when you know so little? And he says that to everybody. Doesn't actually bother to answer any of those questions. But he does take Job on a tour of the wonders of creation to show how little he really knows of the world. God shows his awesome, inspiring power. And in the face of all of this, all Job's arguments and his questions just dissolve. He says, I heard about you from others. Now I've seen you with my own eyes. And he realizes that for all his questions, he just has to trust God based purely on who he is. Awesome, sovereign, God of all creation. And in the final section of the book, we read that Job's fortunes are restored. even more than before. It's a happy ending, kind of. But we may be left with this feeling of, what was that all about? Thinking, hang on a minute, Job was just like a sort of piggy in the middle between God and Satan, whilst they have this little argument. Well, personally, I find Luke 22 helpful to give me a bit of insight into Job. It doesn't mention Job, but it mentions a story similar to Job. Job's story is not completely unique, as it turns out. So in Luke 22, verses 31 to 34, Jesus says to Simon, "Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers." So Simon, of course, named Peter later, was about to experience a time of testing. And Jesus predicts as much. In the very next verse, as it happens, he says that he will be challenged, that he will deny Jesus 3 times before the cock crows. And Jesus says he will pray that his faith will not fail, that it will cause him to bounce back and strengthen his brothers. So Jesus is very much on Simon Peter's side, rooting for him, praying for him, knowing that he will make mistakes, that he will deny him, but still praying that he bounces back with full of faith. Then I realized what was going on in Job. It wasn't so much Job as piggy in the middle while God and Satan argue over him. It was God and Job together against the enemy, against Satan. God is on Job's side, rooting for him, just as he was with Simon. And here's the essence of the struggle. It's a spiritual battle for faith, isn't it? Not just a physical one against illness, or in Peter's case, failure. There's an earthly battle, yes, but there's also a spiritual battle. And Jesus guides Peter to think perhaps more about the spiritual battle. He says, "I have prayed that your faith may not fail." Interesting, he's not praying that he will resist the temptation to deny Jesus. He knows he'll do that. No, the battle Jesus is talking about is for faith. And Jesus very helpfully gives Peter the heads up about it all. And that helps to change the game a bit, doesn't it? Change the focus. So Peter doesn't get overwhelmed with the sense of failure. He knows there's more to fight for. The amazing thing about Job is that he wins the battle of faith without being given the heads up, without the bigger picture, without that perspective. And there's plenty more to say about Job and about the subjects it raises in the book, but I will leave it there. And if you want to study Job a little bit more, I can point you towards a good book on Job, Charles Swindoll. It was a very good one that I got on Kindle. I found that very helpful. So thank you for listening. God bless. Bye for now.